The prison cafeteria went silent so fast you could hear trays stop clanging. Captain Henderson stood frozen, sweat visible on his forehead, looking at Mike Tyson, who had just spoken words that everyone in the room had heard clearly. The other guards stood motionless, uncertain what to do. The inmates watched, holding their breath. 1 week earlier, Mike had walked into this prison trying to keep his head down and do his time quietly. But Captain Henderson had other plans. Now, to understand how 1 week of targeted harassment led to a confrontation that left a prison captain speechless in front of everyone, we need to go back to the beginning of Mike's first week. Before we get to that moment, if you're enjoying these untold Mike Tyson stories, we post new videos every single day, so hit that subscribe button and don't miss out. It was 1992, early in Mike Tyson's sentence. He was 25 years old, trying to adjust to a reality that still felt surreal, prison life, with all its rigid rules, hierarchies, and daily routines that defined every moment. Mike had been processed through intake, photographed, fingerprinted, given his orange uniform, assigned his inmate number, and escorted to his cell in C Block. The walk through the facility had been strange, other inmates watching him, some recognizing who he was, guards maintaining order but clearly aware they had someone famous in their custody. His cell was small, 8 feet by 10 feet, a metal bunk bed bolted to the wall, a small metal desk and chair, a toilet with no seat, a tiny sink. Concrete walls painted institutional gray, one small window with bars, too high to see through properly. Mike was organizing the few personal items he'd been allowed when he heard footsteps approaching in the corridor. Heavy boots, purposeful stride. A man appeared at his cell door. White, probably late 40s, gray hair cut military short. He wore a corrections officer uniform with captain's bars on his shoulders. His face was hard, lined from years working in the system. "Tyson," the man said, not a question, a statement. Mike turned to face him. "Yeah. I'm Captain Henderson, head of security for C Block. You're in my house now." "Understood," Mike said calmly. Henderson stepped closer to the bars. "Let me make something very clear from the start. I don't care who you were outside these walls. I don't care how many fights you won or how much money you made. In here, you're just another number. You're inmate 922,335. That's all." Mike nodded. "I get it." Henderson's eyes narrowed. "You get it? You call me Captain Henderson, not man, not boss, not anything else. Captain Henderson, every time, understood." "Yeah, I understand, Captain Henderson." Henderson stared at him for a long moment, as if waiting for Mike to show attitude or resistance. When Mike just looked back calmly, Henderson turned and walked away without another word. Mike sat on his bunk, the thin mattress barely cushioning the metal frame beneath. Stay calm, he thought, first day. Don't let him get to you. The next morning, Mike woke to the sound of cell doors opening electronically, the metallic clanging echoing through the block. Morning count, then breakfast. He joined the line of inmates heading to the cafeteria. The routine was simple: line up, get your tray, receive your food, find a seat, eat, return your tray, leave. Mike was maybe 10th in line, waiting patiently. Then he heard a voice he already recognized. "Tyson." Mike turned. Captain Henderson was walking toward the line. "Yeah." "Get to the back of the line, right now." Mike glanced at the inmates ahead of him, confused. "Why? I've been waiting." "Did I ask you to question me?" Henderson interrupted sharply. "Back of the line, move." The other inmates were watching now. Some looked uncomfortable. Others kept their eyes down. "Captain Henderson, what did I?" "That's strike one, back of the line, last time I'm saying it." Don't give him a reason to extend your time, Mike thought. Just do it. He walked to the back without another word. As he passed, an inmate muttered quietly, "Henderson's already got it out for you, man." By the time Mike got his food, breakfast was nearly over. He barely had time to eat before guards started clearing the cafeteria. That afternoon during yard time, Mike walked the perimeter. The yard was maybe 50 yards square, surrounded by high concrete walls topped with razor wire. Some inmates played basketball, others lifted weights, some just stood in groups talking. Mike was on his second lap when Henderson approached. "Tyson." Mike stopped. "Yeah." Henderson looked him up and down, his eyes settling on Mike's arms. Even in the prison uniform, Mike's physique was obvious, heavily muscled from years of professional training. "Your arms are pretty big," Henderson said. Mike wasn't sure where this was going. "Okay. I don't want you using that size to intimidate other inmates. No flexing, no showing off. You understand?" Mike stared at him. "I'm just walking, Captain." "I'm telling you now before it becomes a problem. I'm watching you, Tyson. Any sign of intimidation, you're going to solitary. Clear." "Stay in control," Mike thought. "He's testing you. Don't play his game." "Clear, Captain Henderson." Henderson turned and walked away. An older inmate sitting nearby shook his head. The message was clear. Henderson was targeting Mike, and everyone could see it. On the fourth day, Mike had his first scheduled shower. C-Block had access to the shower facilities from 2:00 to 2:30 p.m. Guards monitored the corridor but didn't stand inside, giving inmates minimal privacy. Mike entered the shower area with his towel and soap. The room had maybe 10 shower heads along the walls. He turned one on and stepped under the stream. The water was lukewarm, pressure weak, but it felt necessary after days of tension. He'd been washing maybe 2 minutes when Captain Henderson's voice echoed through the room. "Tyson, 5 minutes total. Other people are waiting." Mike looked around. 3 other inmates, 6 unused shower heads, nobody waiting. "I just started, Captain," Mike called back. "5 minutes, I'm timing you." Mike washed quickly. 3 minutes later, Henderson's voice came again. "Time's up, Tyson, out now." Mike still had soap in his hair. "Captain, I need to rinse." "Out now, or it's a disciplinary write-up." Don't let him add time to your sentence, Mike thought. Just get out. He turned off the water, grabbed his towel, and left still covered in soap. As he walked past Henderson in the corridor, the captain had a slight smirk on his face. On the 5th day, Mike went to collect his commissary order. He'd submitted a request days earlier: decent soap, instant coffee, candy bars, writing paper. Small things that made life tolerable. He stood in line at the commissary window. When his turn came, the inmate worker checked the list and looked confused. "Tyson, right. 922,335. "Yeah." The worker checked again, then looked in the back. He returned shaking his head. "This is weird. Says you had an order, but it's not here. Shows as lost." "Lost?" Mike said. "How does that happen?" The worker shrugged helplessly. "Don't know, man. You'll have to reorder." "That takes another 3 days, Mike said. "Yeah, sorry." Mike noticed Captain Henderson walking past in the corridor, close enough to have heard. As Henderson passed, he glanced at Mike with the briefest smile before continuing. He did this, Mike thought, but stay calm, stay calm. The 6th morning started with another cell inspection. Mike heard boots in the corridor, and Captain Henderson appeared with another guard. "Inspection, Tyson, step back." Mike moved to the back of his cell. Henderson entered, checking under the bunk, opening Mike's locker, running his hand along the shelf. Everything was in order. Mike had been careful. Henderson picked up one of Mike's books and flipped through it, then tossed it carelessly on the bed. "Your bunk's not tight enough," Henderson said, "and this area's dusty." He ran his finger along the desk. "Look at that." Mike looked at the bed. He'd made it carefully that morning. The desk wasn't dusty. "It's clean, Captain." Henderson turned to face him. "Are you arguing with me about your cell condition?" Don't lose control, Mike thought. That's what he wants. No, Captain Henderson. Good, clean it again. I'll check later. Henderson left. That evening, Mike joined the dinner line. It had been 6 days of constant harassment, but he'd maintained control, hadn't given Henderson any legitimate excuse for discipline. The cafeteria was crowded, C block and D block overlapping, maybe 100 inmates. Guards stationed around the perimeter. Noise level high conversations, trays clattering, chairs scraping. Mike was 15th in line when he heard it. Tyson. Captain Henderson was walking toward him. Yeah. Step out of line, back to your cell, dinner revoked tonight. Mike felt something shift inside. 6 days. 6 days of taking harassment, 1 week of this, but this is too much. Why? Mike asked, his voice calm but firm. Because I said so. That's all you need. Move. Mike didn't move. Inmates around him stopped talking. People were watching. He needs to learn, Mike thought. He needs to understand boundaries. Captain Henderson, I'm asking for a reason. Henderson's face showed anger. You're questioning a direct order. I'm asking for clarification, Mike said. The cafeteria had gone noticeably quieter. Guards were paying attention, hands moving toward equipment, ready to respond. Henderson stepped closer, trying to use proximity to intimidate. You don't get to question my orders. I run this block. When I tell you something, you do it. End of discussion. Mike looked at Henderson for a long moment. The cafeteria was almost silent now, everyone watching. Then Mike spoke, his voice carrying clearly. 1 week, Captain Henderson. Henderson blinked. What? 1 week. I've been here 1 week. Every single day, you've targeted me for no reason. You need to watch, Henderson started. Breakfast line, yard harassment, 3-minute shower, my commissary disappearing, my clean cell suddenly being dirty. Mike's tone was controlled but firm. Stay calm, words not fists. Mike took a step forward, closing the distance. Not threatening, but his presence undeniable. Now just a couple feet from Henderson. The cafeteria went completely silent. One of the guards near the wall started moving forward, hand on his radio. Captain, should I? Henderson raised his hand sharply without looking away from Mike. Stay there, Wilson. The guard stopped but stayed alert, watching closely. You look at me and you see someone who used to have power, Mike continued, his voice calm but carrying weight. Fame, money, respect, and you want to make sure I know that means nothing in here. Henderson's jaw tightened. A bead of sweat appeared on his temple. You think wearing that uniform makes you powerful, Mike said, eyes locked on Henderson's. You think rank and rules mean you can push people around without consequence. The silence in the cafeteria was absolute. Mike's voice dropped slightly, but in the silence it carried to every corner. But here's what you need to understand, Captain. Outside these walls, without that uniform protecting you, you wouldn't talk to me like this. And we both know why. Henderson's face had lost color. Sweat was now visible on his forehead. Outside, without the badge, without the system, Mike paused. You wouldn't feel so powerful, and you know it. Are you, Henderson's voice cracked, he swallowed, are you threatening me? No, Mike said simply. I'm just pointing out reality. Before we continue, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was Mike right to stand up to Captain Henderson? Now back to the story. Mike took a step back immediately, creating distance. Say what needs to be said, then step away. I've been respectful all week, Captain, even when you haven't been. I haven't broken rules. I'm trying to do my time. His voice was firm but measured. But respect goes both ways. You want it from inmates. Give it. Don't abuse authority just because you can. Mike turned and stepped back toward his place in line before Henderson could respond. The inmates made room for him. Henderson stood frozen. His mouth opened but no words came. His face showed humiliation and anger. The guard named Wilson spoke quietly. Captain, What do you want us to do?" Henderson's hand was trembling slightly. He looked around, at the watching guards, at the watching inmates, at Mike's back as he stood calmly in line. Finally, barely audible, "Nothing, let him get his food." He turned and walked out of the cafeteria, his footsteps echoing in the silence. As soon as Henderson was gone, the noise level gradually returned. Inmates started talking again, processing what they'd witnessed. Several near Mike showed respect. One muttered, "That took guts, man." Mike got his tray, found a seat, and ate quietly. His hands were steady, but inside he was still processing. You kept control. No violence, no real threats, just truth. After that night, Captain Henderson's behavior changed completely. He still did his job, inspections, supervision, security, but he never targeted Mike again, never singled him out. He treated him like other inmates, fairly, by the book. The other guards noticed. Some seemed relieved. They started treating Mike more normally. And the inmates, the story spread through the facility within hours. By morning, other blocks had heard versions. Mike Tyson had stood up to Captain Henderson publicly, had called him out, and Henderson had backed down. Mike Tyson entered prison trying to do his time quietly, but Captain Henderson, head of C-Block security, had other plans. For 1 week, Henderson targeted Mike with constant harassment, sending him to the back of lines, restricting shower time, making commissary orders disappear, conducting fake inspections. Mike stayed calm through all of it, controlled his anger, didn't give Henderson legitimate reasons for discipline. But on day 6, when Henderson tried to revoke Mike's dinner for no reason in front of a crowded cafeteria, Mike had had enough. In front of 100 inmates, Mike confronted Henderson, listed every harassment, made the pattern clear. Then Mike said what everyone was thinking: outside these walls, without that uniform, you wouldn't feel so powerful, and you know it. Henderson stood speechless. Mike stepped back immediately, got in line, ate his dinner. Henderson left. This story wasn't about violence or threats. It was about standing up to abuse of authority, about maintaining dignity, about understanding that respect must flow both ways. Henderson learned that a uniform gives authority, but not the right to abuse it, and that sometimes speaking truth calmly is more powerful than any threat could ever be. Mike served his sentence. Henderson continued his career, but after that night their dynamic was forever changed, based on mutual respect, because Henderson learned what everyone in that prison already knew: some people you just don't push. In prison, you don't win by being loud. You win by staying calm.